Well, here we go with another regionals here in China for Spiritforged, and we are going to be recapping everything that happened in day one because it happened while we were sleeping. But even with that, we had some really interesting matchups of like Jax vs Draven, Sett vs Rumble, and even a Draven vs Leona, where Leona was 4-1-1. So what were those gameplays looking like, and what is the recap going to be? Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. So yeah, last week was rather interesting because yeah, we had Draven that ended up being in the top 64 with like a 60% field right there. That's insane. And so now we have another regionals that is happening right now in China with Spiritforged, all that jazz. So it's going to be really fun to see what's going to be happening here. And when we look at every deck that has been showing up, at least at this regionals, we're going to be seeing that Draven did have a little bit of a fall here. Last tournament, I believe it was around 35%. Now we're down to 28% at 148 competitors. Now keep in mind, 512 competing here last week, had 511. So here we are. But it's going to be really fun to see how this top 64 starts to play out. Because, yeah, we still have Irelia that seemed a little bit of an increase there at 66%. Kaisa, again, having a strong showing at deck number 3 at 39 and 7% of the field. 26 at 5% for Fiora. 22 at 4% for Victor. And one of my favorites, Ezreal, going up to 21 decks at 4%. And also, I'm curious about Ornn because I'm getting kind of excited for him, and I want to see what he is able to do here. And this is something that is an absolute blast to see. So we don't have any deck lists today. Rightfully so, they're still kept under wraps until at least the top 64, but we do have the gameplay to go over, and we're going to be looking at multiple rounds of the tournament to be able to bring you the commentary and gameplay so you can see what was going on. Now, first and foremost, it was really interesting because before we dive into the gameplay, I want to talk about how many ties we had on stream. This was interesting, and again, they did just change the rule where it's a 60-minute timer, and then after that, you go to turns and you do 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it's over, and you have to win by 2. So that can be a little bit of a disadvantage. Sometimes you're losing those 2 turns, but you do get a little bit longer to play, so it really evens out. And this is something that, again, they're trying, but it was interesting to see because Jax versus Draven ended in a tie, Draven versus Renata ended in a tie, and even Jinx versus Yi ended in a tie. And so it's like, oh my gosh, how many ties are we going to have? And again, this isn't necessarily a huge issue. It could just be the coincidences of being on stream. But at the same time, it's like, is this new format going to be a little bit of an issue? But even at the same time, we did not see that be a huge issue, at least last week. So it could just be a little bit of, you know, playing against these newer matchups or just maybe playing a little bit slower than what people normally would be playing, and it's resulting in ties. So again, we're going to be keeping that at least in the back of our heads as we continue to see these tournaments, because again, if a lot of people do continue to go to time and going to get to ties, it's like, well, why is that happening? And so we'll be taking a look at that. But even still, I really do love this field that we have here. I mean, even the fact that we had Jinx that had more decks show up than Rumble. I mean, yes, it was one more deck than Rumble, sure. But still, that Jinx even had a little bit of an appearance. And not only that, Jinx in round 5, which we're going to be looking at, is one deck that was able to go 3-1. And that is in a very Draven-heavy field. Not only that, Annie only having 12 decks, even though having a 5th place finish last week is a pretty big deal, but one that's, you know, kind of interesting to see why Annie is still kind of falling back in the China meta. I don't necessarily think that Annie is dead or that she has been overran by Draven. In fact, quite the opposite. But Draven, I think, does carry a lot more of the consistency that Annie just doesn't seem to have anymore with the shift of the meta. Annie seems to have fallen a little bit behind in the sense of it does extremely well when going first, but can really struggle when going second. And if you have to rely on the roll of the dice to really determine whether or not you win, and I'm not saying that going second for Annie is a guaranteed loss. I'm just saying that it is just that much more of an uphill battle, whereas you might be having like a 56, maybe a 60% game one going first win ratio, but then like maybe a 40 to 45% going second. And it's like, that's a big differential there and a pretty big discrepancy. Whereas Draven can do decently well, even going second, and so it's like, again, we're going into that debate. And again, it's also interesting that Lux even had 9 decks that had that showed up, but even like 17 Azir at 3% of the field. So again, I'm going to be excited to see what happens tonight, because we're going to be seeing the final rounds and then breaking into the top 64 and going until we have a champion. And I love watching that final round. We're going to be commentating that and doing an English broadcast of that for you guys to see tomorrow. So look forward to that stream, as well as we will continue to bring to you the meta watch and things like that too, because this is going to be really fun. I love regional season, and it's crazy because China just does one after each week. So we're going to have two more even after this tournament, week after week. And then of course, by that point, Spiritforged will be released in English, and we actually should have a pretty good grounding for us to be able to see what needs to happen here in our meta. So here we go, the guys, though. We are going to be taking a look at Jax versus the Draven first and foremost. Now, of course, this was round number 1, and again, this one was one that ended in a tie. So kind of an interesting play there that it was a rather slow game. It went all the way to time and even to turns after that. So we're going to be watching game number 1 here more than anything, because yeah, this is a really interesting matchup. And I went against Savage on Thursday when he was playing Jax and was actually very impressed with how it played out. It did incredibly well and was able to get a lot of momentum early on. And even the signature spell was surprising, to say the least. The fact that you could basically say that your unit won't take damage this turn, and then you're able to draw a card, something along those lines, and then be able to, go from there is incredibly powerful. Not only that, I feel like at this point of the meta, if you are running orange, you need to be running the Akshan. Again, he is such a powerful unit. He is a 4 for 4 with no power cost, but if you pay 2 orange as your power cost, you are then able to take over a enemy equipment. So for example, when you are going against Draven, for example, well, that's perfectly fine, because you're then going to be able to take over his signature equipment, which is really cool. That's powerful here in there. And then of course, when Akshan dies, then the equipment will go back over, and yeah, it's just a really powerful ability to be had. And so again, we're going into this, and it's already a pretty close game. Now, Draven, of course, is going to be setting up the game to just try to hold this battlefield and then try to make that effort to take the other one. So we're at a little bit of a standstill, but the Draven is a little bit ahead because, of course, he has the ability to go one ahead of scoring at the start of every turn. And so already we are seeing a lot of runes, and I really think that Draven needs to have almost a lot of the same strategy that Kai'Sa had in set 1. And what I mean by that is you're not necessarily slowing down or you're not paying a lot of power cost early in the game. You're trying to get to those 7, 8, 9 rune counts, and then you're okay with recycling your runes and taking care of the power cost. If you do end up sacrificing way too much power early on, then you just get in trouble. And so again, this is something that is really powerful. And I also really love they're bringing up the battlefield here, and it is a really good one because you are able to ready 2 runes at the end of the turn that you conquer here. And so, especially for Draven, that can be powerful. But again, Jax even has a couple of tricks up his sleeve that can be really powerful. So when you attack in, you think that you're going to be able to take this, and it's like, well, I don't necessarily know. Also, can I just say, I really want that Poro counter. I said this last week when we did the other recap, but I just love that Poro counter. I'm going to be looking for one, probably on Etsy, to be able to pick that up for Vegas. I know you have to do the paper write down to keep track of score, but also I'm keeping track of it with a Poro. I mean, I do have my figure dudes here from my, my box that I got, and all that jazz, but still. This is going to be a tough matchup, though, and I really do like where this is going. We have a Darius that is now in at the battlefield. He has the equipment equipped to him, and he is ready to charge in with the Noxus Hopeful. And again, I do actually like the Noxus Hopeful as the play instead of Battering Ram, because if you just play one card, it immediately takes off 2 runes in the cost and goes down to 2 for a 4 might. Whereas with like the Miracle Draven, you have a lot of issues of trying to play as many cards as you can to get it down to a 1 or 2 cost for a 5 might. And it's like, do you really want to almost, risk that a little bit more? But here we go again with the signature spell coming down, and again, this is going to be a big deal here. So not going to take any combat damage there, and it still will be able to deal combat damage. And so that can already be a big difference maker and a great way for you to be able to kind of save your unit there, because you're able to take out an enemy opponent and then still be able to stay. And so there we go with the Hourglass being used to kill. And then, of course, not going to be able to get over the might in that case. So the Darius will go right back to base. And again, that's kind of a good trick for you to have, especially against your opponent, especially Draven, for that matter, because he does the same thing, but with like fighter flights or things like that. And then now you go in with your signature spell, and you're like, nope, I'm doing that now. So really interesting to see, but almost one that you need to adjust. And I would say in this game 1 here that the Draven player probably hasn't played a lot of games against Jax. And that's going to be a very big discrepancy there too, because, Jax, the Jax competitor, has probably played a great deal of games against Draven. And so he's probably a little bit more seasoned for this kind of matchup than what we're seeing with Draven here. And that's going to be the big thing. Especially me as a competitor, one of the things that I try to do is memorize all the decks here, to try to have that familiarity and preparation for when I'm, going into these games. That kind of knowledge to know what you need to prepare for can be huge. But with something like Jax, it's like, dude, we had, 5 decks last regionals in China, and it's like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. And so, again, here we are, though. We're 13 minutes into game number 1 here, and Akshan is going to be attacking into the Draven. That is going to be a 4 for 4, but we still have 6 runes up, so even like a not so fast could be something to really anticipate. Draven is going to be activating his ability to go up to 6, meaning that it's going to be almost forcing the play of the Akshan a little bit. Now, what that is going to be that is played there is going to be an equipment there that will be equipped at that point, going up to the count. Now it's going to be on Draven if he wants to activate his spell. There it is, a switcheroo, which is going to be actually a pretty good play here. So now I think it is going to be 7 on Draven to 6 on the Akshan. So interesting that he would even want to maybe activate the Draven, but it's a case maybe that the not so fast comes into play there. And so, yeah, it looks like it is going to be now a 6-7 there. The Draven now having the advantage with Switcheroo. Switcheroo will resolve, meaning that there is no not so fast in hand of the Jax. But still, here we go with another equipment that is going to be coming out and immediately equipped to Akshan. And that is going to be a little bit of insurance. So it's basically a Zhonya's Hourglass that is able to be equipped and add 1. So again, you're going to be going back up to that, and it looks like it might very well be a trade, if I'm doing my math correct. And which, in this case, that's going to be a pretty good win there, because the Draven is going to die, and the Akshan just will go back to base and still have the Guardian Angel equipped to him. So again, already a really great win, especially on getting your opponent out of that battlefield. Now, you still do have to worry about the Darius back in base, but at the same time, you're still looking pretty good, all things considered. And so it looks like we are going to be protecting the Jax again with a Guardian Angel switching with the Jax Legend ability. And then hiding a card there. Now, it's like, well, in green and orange, what can be hidden? That's going to be a good question. Now, of course, there's an Azir card that does allow all units in a battlefield to immediately retreat back to base. That does keep them alive for another turn. But still, with Draven now going into 7 runes at the ready with a Darius out onto the battlefield, this can be something pretty scary. Now, as a Darius, do you go into the battlefield that is open to try to just score a point and then try to build up the battlefield again? Or do you try to take this battlefield that has a lot of defense? I mean, that is a double Guardian Angel on the Jax. Not only that, you also have the hidden card that you got to try to play around. And so, yeah, I'm going to be really curious to see what this Draven player is going to be. And just so you guys know, this is going to be round number 1 of the regionals here. And so here we go with, and Akshan even being back in base. I think he's at 5 or 6 right now in his might. And so here we go. Going to be doing a fight or flight targeting the Jax. That's going to be defied in this case. Already a good answer to that. And still with the hidden card out, and I think 4 cards in hand. So, and I do really like that they have 2 judges at the regular, or at the stream table. That's really nice. Sometimes they kind of seem like they get in the way a tiny bit, but they are just trying to help make sure that everything is correctly documented, especially with the dice. The +2, -2s, or whatever that they might have there is very helpful. And so here we go. Going up to 5 in this case, with the Darius deciding to attack into the other battlefield that is wide open. And still, though, he has not won a lot of combats. And that's going to be one of the biggest things that you can do against a Draven, is if you can stop him from winning combats, stop him from drawing those cards, you can have a rather big advantage, which is why I think even Jax might have a little bit of an advantage here in going against the Draven. Now, of course, it all depends on what you end up drawing in response to what Draven has to offer. And so, again, already another hidden card. He's already used 1 fight or flight, trying to get the Jax off of the battlefield. So, again, you got to be a little bit careful about how this could play out. Not only that, we could even see, like, if that is a fight or flight and someone doesn't attack into the Darius, he activates the fight or flight, moves Darius back ready, attacks into the other battlefield. If they somehow get him off of that battlefield, then he just plays 1 more card and Darius is immediately readied back up and then swinging him for 9. So again, some really cool dynamics that you can have with the Darius here that you got to keep in mind as you go into this match. But still, the fact that Jax is going against the Draven and it's 5-5 is so cool to be able to see. And one that I'm really excited about, because I just love the potential here. And here we go with another Jax. That's going to be the alt art one. So when you equip a unit to it, then you are able to tap 1 rune and you can draw a card off of said equipped. So really powerful ability, and paying 1 to be able to draw a card, especially in green and orange, is very much welcomed here. And so here we go again. We are going to be switcherooing this equipment from one to another. And that's going to be a pretty big advantage there. And then, oh my gosh, with the damage that is going to be coming down to the Darius. So you deal might to a unit based off of your might, and then you detach an equipment that is equipped to said unit. So the Jax in and of itself is going to be worth a lot of might. That is going to be able to kill the Darius. Now, one thing that I'm curious about, it is in Chinese. So let me check on if it is going to be has to be in a battlefield. So because if he fight or flights it back, that's going to be a big deal. So here it is. Yep. So strike down, choose an equipped friendly unit. It deals damage equal to its might to an enemy unit, then detach it. So yeah, it doesn't matter. That's a powerful card right there. And we see right there that a Tide Turner is going to be activated so that it is able to still hold the base. But still, knowing that that is the only thing that's there, you do have to be a little bit careful with 2 cards in hand with the Draven. Because if it is the signature spell, or even if it's not, and it's just a it's just a blade instead, it can still be played at reaction speed, which will add 2 to go up to 4. But it looks like the Akshan is going to be attacking in at 6. And so right there, though, a fight or flight in hand, that's going to be a 1 combat with the legend ability, drawing a card for Draven, and a great answer there. Now, of course, the action is still going to have the buff on it in this case with the equipment, and that's going to be a hold point going up to 6 for the Draven, and a very hard-fought victory there. And a great answer. And it looks like we have been actually seeing a lot more of the Mind Splitters in this deck. I mean, that was the one that ended up winning the regionals, and so we might even be seeing a couple of copycats here in that regard, because I mean, Mind Splitter can be such a powerful, card combination to see, okay, Jax, what do you have in hand? All right, I'm just going to get rid of that. And especially if you see something like Counter-Strike, again, what that specifically says is choose a unit. The next time that unit would be dealt damage this turn, prevent it, and draw 1. So again, it is a very powerful combination there, and something to keep in mind. And I gotta say, I really do like Jax's signature spell. It is a powerful one, and one that definitely should be kept in mind. I can't wait for this set to come out in English either. This is going to be an absolute blast. And so the snag of the sleeve to remove. That reminds me of when, what was it? It was on Rift Labs, and I think it was Jibs that was playing his match where he on accident flipped his discard on top of his deck. Loved that clip. I'll have to play that for you guys here soon. But that was such a funny clip, and it was just like, what do we do? The odds of that. Gotta say, though, really interesting, though. The Mind Splitter is going to be played. The equipment is going to be sent to the discard, and everything else can, of course, be written down. But it's interesting, too, that the Not So Fast is going to be stuck in hand. But looks like the Draven is going to be going in, all in, on the Mind Splitter into the battlefield with the Tide Turner. But nothing else is going to be there in this case. So, again, another point going up 6-6, but you're going to have 9 might on the Mind Splitter and then 2 might on the Tide Turner for a total of 11. But Draven did sacrifice a lot of runes that last turn. Went from 7 down to 4, and he is completely tapped out. So it feels like almost a free turn here for Jax, but he has to figure out how to take this battlefield. And if he's able to, good on him there. That is going to be a great response. And I mean, he has a lot of might on board. He could very well be at 12 or near. He's either at 11 or near 12. But again, his opponent was able to see his entire hand. So the only thing that's necessarily new here is the card that he drew at the start of the turn. But it looks like we're going to do 5 and 2 in this case. Is another Akshan potentially coming in? No, Akshan's 4. But it looks like a accelerated... Ooh, Misfortune coming in. And then like that, we're going to be attaching an equipment with the Jax Legend ability. Now he's deciding which one to take. He's leaning towards the Akshan, but he can take essentially from anywhere on the board at this point. And again, this is going to be a really difficult decision to try to make here. So, yep, looks like going to be switching it over to the Misfortune in this case. And again, that's going to be giving +2 because of said equipment being moved. Jax is going to be moving back. Interesting. With the Zhonya's. Okay, so good reveal there. And if you attack in with everything, damage is dealt simultaneously. So at that point, you would be able to pick which one would technically survive the Zhonya's Hourglass. Now, depends on how he deals the damage, but with dealing 11 damage, you know, you are going to be losing at least 2 units here, depending on how you attack in. So it looks like we are going to be going in this case, and the Jax is then going to be readied up for the Misfortune. So a really cool sequence there. And a very powerful addition. I can see why now that the MF was added into the deck. I was a little bit hesitant at first. I'm like, well, I mean, it looks cool, but why? You know? But no, that is a really well thought out attack right there. And then, of course, that is gonna be... So it looks like, yeah, the Misfortune is going to be going back to base. Remember that if it does die to the Zhonya's Hourglass, that is not a move. But still, oh my gosh, that is a powerful turn right there. Having the Guardian Angel then coming in. And dang, everything moving in. That is something to watch. And then, of course, going to be going up in a point at that. So should be up to 7, if I recall. Okay, looks like they might be double-checking the math real quick on things. Okay, yeah. It's one of these moments I wish I knew Chinese. But still, yeah, this is going to be... They're double-checking the math on things. And very well, yeah, are probably just rechecking everything. Okay. And then going up to 7. There we go. Okay, good. Yeah, and so, again, though, and now Draven has 6 runes, and that is it. And that is gonna be the game as the Jax takes down the Draven in game 1. Now, keep in mind, of course, that this did end in a tie, unfortunately, but still, you're able to see what the Jax was able to do. And I just gotta say, I love that. Now, next, of course, what we're gonna be diving into, we're gonna be skipping the Rek'Sai, or we're gonna be skipping Sett vs Rumble. That was a 2-0. Sett took that. Really cool to see that. And I love that Sett is still being utilized here in Spiritforged. Awesome. Rumble, though, still seems like it's just not there yet. I want it to be, but it's not. And so we're going to be going into round number 3. Now, of course, this is going to be Irelia versus Rek'Sai. And this is going to be interesting. And the main reason why I say that is because both these rounds are rather quick, all things considered. But the big thing here is that Rek'Sai was able to go against Irelia at a 2-0. And so this is something to watch because I feel like Rek'Sai is still very much slept on and one that needs to be watched because it could be a very powerful deck, and especially when it goes wide. But oh my gosh, when Irelia opens with 3 Guardian Angels, wow. Well, Yeah, that Irelia is going to be very much protected. But the scary part here is that you're not necessarily having a lot more answers in hand. That's 3 of the 5 cards in your hand, and that's not something that you want to maybe see. Oh, that's pretty good. And then, of course, still going to be able to find a unit to still play at that. And the kill spell is a really interesting one, because if it's seen from anywhere other than your hand, or played anywhere other than your hand, it costs 2 less. So you get a kill spell for 3 and a power, which is really powerful in Rek'Sai, but you have been seeing it a lot in Victor. So gotta say, love this combination here. And I gotta say, I'm also a fan of Rek'Sai. I love what Rek'Sai can do, and I've seen some really impressive games. There was one that I did on stream with a friend a couple of weeks ago now, and he took it to me, pretty well. And I was impressed and almost won it. But again, Rek'Sai still feels rather swingy. That's the hard part. Either he hits and runs, or kind of misses the momentum and just lags behind. And so there's that risk and reward there that can be very difficult. But I got to say, really love what Rek'Sai can do. And so here we go with an Irelia moving in. Now she was chosen, so she gets 1 with the Guardian Angel. And then when she came in readied up, and then a Guardian Angel, and then a Unguard, which is going to be adding 3 because you add 1 every time that you choose her. And so already that is going to be a big swing in as the battlefield is taken. And of course, On Warrens is going to be discarding a Lonely Portal and drawing 1. And so still already looking rather good. And can't wait to see how this game continues to unravel here. Now, here's the hard part, too, and I really feel like that the Irelia is going to be lagging behind a little bit in this case just because of the 3 Guardian Angels. You got to be so careful about that in this case, because it's going to be tough to be able to answer. And the Darius in hand, ooh, and the Cole of the week is going to be very powerful here. Getting rid of at least a Guardian Angel, if anything, but of course you do have to sack your own unit. But still, also, if the unit in battlefield base goes over to the other battlefield, then the Rek'Sai Legend ability can be utilized on Conquer, looking at 1 with the bug at least first, and then you can decide if you want it or you want to put it back. And so in this case, I think he either forgot or ignored that ability in particular, but it can be something where it's like, hey, I don't need another Darius per se. Cool. Instead, and you put that to the bottom, and then you're able to look at the next 2 cards. So it can be a very powerful ability for you to be able to utilize here. And so, yep, looks like the Darius is going to be recycled to the bottom with the Honest Broker. Now, of course, when it dies, it will create a gold token. And this is also the big risk of Irelia. She is very powerful, but she is the most power-hungry deck in Set 2. And what I mean by that is she has, oh, there we go, with the Darius coming in at the ready. That's going to be at 7 in this case. Now, Irelia currently is going to be at 6 and tapped out. But again, that's what I'm saying here is that Irelia is very power hungry. You already see that Irelia is going to be down to 3, and anytime that you equip a equipment to a unit, you have to sacrifice 1, and that counts as being chosen, which means that with Aurelia's legend ability, you then have to recycle it at that point. And again, here we go back to that debate of what might be better than, in this case, Yasuo, which has a 2 cost to be able to move to base or from a battlefield to base, or from a base to a battlefield for 2. Or Aurelia's ability to basically, when they're chosen, be able to move around anywhere. Now, Aurelia's ability to pay 1 to be able to ready her up again can be something that makes a difference, but you still have to be extremely careful with that. And I don't like where that hidden card is. That can be a little bit difficult to tell which battlefield it's in. So, but I mean, at least they know, where it's at. But still, I would slide it over a little bit. But here we go with the charm being activated to move the Darius over. Another solid answer in this case. But the Hidden Blade is going to be coming out, targeting the Darius to be able to draw 2 on his death. Now, that will still open up the battlefield to be able to get some things moving, and we also have, oh my gosh, a double cull of the week. So that could be a very powerful turn. That would take out the other two Guardian Angels. But again, you still have to worry about dealing with Irelia. I mean, the hard part with Irelia is that she still has Deflect on her. And while Cull of the Week doesn't actually have a targeting type ability, if you need to deal with it again, it can really start to cost you here. And so here we go, moving into the battlefield. That is going to be gusted back to hand. That's going to go through because, again, the Rek'Sai, I don't believe, has a whole lot of abilities like that. But now the board is wide open. Nothing to be lost at this point. And all the runes to spend. So is going to be playing out a Seal floating 1. And what that essentially means is that you tap the rune to create a rune that exists in the cosmos, essentially. And then you're able to use that rune instead of just losing the rune to the power cost. Now, a lot of people are saying maybe they should have errata that you can't float runes, but still, it's going to be something to keep in mind. And the Cull of the Week is going to be coming out. And then after that, the Guardian Angel is no longer equipped at this point. And that's going to be pretty powerful here, too. And so, yeah, this is something that I'm very curious about. And if you do just go all in on the other Cull, now, of course, you would be destroying your own unit at this point. But getting rid of Irelia, especially with the cards in hand that he started with. So it might have been maybe a little bit of a misplay there. But, you know, that happens sometimes. Gosh, I mean, how many misplays have I made at that point? I go on stream a lot. I already make a ton of misplays as it is, so. But yeah, here we go. Very well could be using the next Cull of the Week. Yep, here we go with another Cull of the Week. That is going to be taking care of the Irelia, recycling a rune. Going down to 4. But still, a really great shift in momentum there. And there is going to be coming out the Honest Broker again. And both battlefields are open. You're going to be hoping for a turn, but there is no units in hand. And again, this can be the issue that Irelia finds herself in. If you take out that main threat with all the equipment, with all the spells that she runs, if you take out the main threat, then you might be just really finding yourself in a bit of a predicament there. But there's going to be another Fight or Flight coming out and almost just a little bit delaying the inevitable here, unfortunately, because unless the Irelia is able to draw a unit to be able to get out onto the battlefield, this is going to be a race against the clock, essentially. And so here we go with another dragon coming in. Now, of course, this is going to be hard casted at this point, but still a really great ability to get in. And, I mean, it has Assault, too, so it'll attack in for 5. And that can be a really big difference maker. And so going to be moving in already to the battlefield. Is there going to be another response? There's a Gust in hand, it looks like. But looks like it will go through this time. Now going to be able to look at the top 2 cards, play one or recycle the rest. So you can play a Seal for a Seal at that point. Or is going to be hard recycling it instead. Interesting there. Again, floating the 1. And so here we go, going into the other battlefield. Doesn't get the Assault, but the Rebuke is going to be coming out on said unit, making it go back to hand. That is going to be a recycle too, but the Irelia, again, just trying to delay the inevitable here. And then 2 are going to be coming out instead, both being taken care of by the seals in this case. So really good job on getting both of those out. And the Draven Audacious is in hand, and that can already start to be a pretty big swing. So the Draven Audacious is going to be coming out. There is still going to be a couple runes at the ready. You can recycle 1 to be able to equip the Guardian Angel, then use the Irelia to ready him up. But it looks like that's not going to be the case in this case. And that's going to be another point for the Rek'Sai here. And so going up to 5, it is 5 to 2, and even those lost turns of not drawing a unit could be a very big disparity to put the Irelia further behind. But still, the Draven Audacious can bring that forward here. So here we go, going up to 6 at this point, able to then utilize that. Ooh, and a good find at that point. I really do like this spell in this unit in the Rek'Sai. It's a really fun one. Now, let me actually pull it up and read specifically what it says. And because it's a really fun card. Now, it says that when you play me, give your other units +2 this turn, and as I'm revealed from your deck, add 2 runes. Or add the cost of 2 runes. So you have +2 essentially, which is really good here, and is able to do so much. And so we'll see how this is able to continue to be played out then. Because right now, it's looking dangerous for the Draven Audacious. And even going up to 6, you could very easily... Oh, there's the signature spell. And again, the signature spell is really fun here. And so what it specifically is Void Rush. It says that reveal the top 2 cards of your main deck. You may banish 1, then play it, reducing its cost by 2, and draw any you did not banish. And so that was one of the cards that actually did get an errata. And again, that errata was basically just to give a little bit more clarification there. And so we'll see how that continues to play out here. And so again, just stacking the battlefields. And this is going to put Irelia between a rock and a hard place, trying to get over that might, especially with Draven Audacious. If it was another Irelia, I would say it was probably possible at this point. But still, I don't know exactly how they might get over this mountain to climb here. And so this will be, time will tell. But it looks like a Call of the Week is going to be coming out, taking out the Honest Broker to remove the Guardian Angel on the Draven Audacious. So again, you got to be careful with how Draven can then move around. But right now, this is looking like the game of Rek'Sai. Just absolute control against this Irelia. And so far in the matches is 2-0 and soon to be 3-0. With how this is working out. Gotta say, love the Rek'Sai here. And I really am going to be curious to see what maybe his matches were in the first 2 rounds. Because, again, like I said, I really do think that Rek'Sai is being slept on here. And so here we go with the card draw. Ride the Wind could be a decent answer here. Being able to take 1 battlefield over, getting a point... Going up to 4 at that point, but you still got to figure out, how do I get over all of that might in a battlefield? I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that you're going to be able to, but I mean, you have a lot of buff spells. Now that's going to be a signature spell coming out. That's going to be minusing 2 and +2 to another unit. And so is going to be picking in this case, the unit. Okay, cool. Still has a lot of runes left. This is going to be the all-in. If you end up winning, great. If you don't, then the game is going to be pretty much over. So going up to 4, going to be able to draw a card on resolution. Also has another signature spell, which again, the cost of that is 1/1 power. So it really isn't all that much to try to get things moving. So I mean, that could be making a really big difference here, but there still is a lot of might to try to get over here. And so here we go again. Like I said, all or nothing. So another signature spell coming in. That is going to be minusing 2 to the Noxus Hopeful, adding 2 to the Draven Audacious at this point. And again, we still have the Ride the Wind, but that isn't going to necessarily have damage be dealt in this case. That's going to be more of a... Yeah, so it's like... Again, though, it's like, yeah, this is a really good swing so far. So you got, yeah, any other responses? And it looks like nope. So the Draven Audacious is going to be able to score the point off of the ability, then score for the battlefield. And so here we go again. We'll see the Ride the Wind to move over to the other battlefield. And again, maybe a little bit of a risk here, but again, you got to try to get back into this game. But just like that, now it is 5 to 6. Now, of course, the Draven Audacious can only be activated once per turn in this case. But still, much closer of a game right now. And then pulling it back to base. Interesting. Because, and that's scary because if there is anything that can be accelerated out, and that's possible, if anything can be accelerated out, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble here. So a bit of a risk, but immediately going to be going over into the battlefield. Now, the Rek'Sai Legend ability can be utilized here. And then that's going to be accelerating out, and that's it. So kind of surprised that he did pull out in that case, because it looks like that sealed up game number 1 as the accelerated unit was able to be found and taking both battlefields. And again, Rek'Sai, really good. And we've been seeing a couple of, in the tournaments I run, we've had Gale wins that has ran some Rek'Sai and had some pretty good success with that. And we've had some other, even in Runes and Rift, they've had some really good turnouts where Rek'Sai has been in like the top 7 of 8 when it came to a very competitive tournament over at Runes and Rift. So gotta say, really love what they were able to do there. Now, I think the next one that we are going to be watching is Jinx versus Yi. Now, the main reason why I say that is gonna be so impressive here is because, I mean, a Jinx was able to go 3-1 in this meta. Now, again, it is going to be something interesting to see what this Jinx is able to actually do here. But still, again, these responses, and against something even as formidable as Yi, does say a lot. So, again, really fun to be able to see this. And Yi has a really good legend ability of being able to, add to when defending. But if Jinx somehow can figure out a way to be able to come back and really have some good wins here, some really good exchanges and showdowns, then why not? And I mean, we did see that this ended up going ended in a tie. So again, something to definitely keep in mind with that. Now, of course, in round 4, it should be noted that it was excuse me. It should be noted that Draven was versus Renata, and that also ended in a tie. That was a 1-1. So really interesting to see there, and Renata even being able to take it to a Draven is interesting to see, and one that definitely needs to be maybe watched out for. There were not a lot of Renatas that were in the matches here, but still, here we go. Now, of course, we're going to be going into game number 2 because I specifically wanted to watch why Jinx was able to then beat Master Yi in the game. And so Master Yi, of course, won game number 1. So Jinx is going to be able to go first. The Obelisk of Power is going to be adding an additional rune and going to be playing out a 2-cost unit and then passing for turn. So already Victor is going to be starting with 4. And going to be playing a first mate and passing. So not necessarily wanting to use the sabotage in the beginning. And instead just wanting to have things play out, get a couple of additional runes to get things moving here. And so again, going to be moving into Arena's Greatest, getting a gold on the move here, and also going up to 2 on the Conquer. And then after that, we are going to be seeing a rune being floated for the power cost of a seal. The Alt Art Seal of Rage. Again, that's got to look so good textured. And then a Falling Star is going to be coming down. Double hit there. And of course, I mean, it does definitely cost a lot, but that is going to be slowing down the Victor at this point, but also saying that the Unguard is not going to be saving you. And then the Tide Turner is going to be coming in again, moving the treasure hunter back to base, creating another gold at that point. And there we go with a Rune Runner coming in. So, I mean, that could be a very good card. Again, it cannot be the target of abilities or spells, but that is going to be a full tap out. And again, I do like the Ruin Runner when you have a developed board, but if you don't have a developed board, it can just really seem to slow you down here. And so here we go. Jinx's ability to be able to draw a card. And very interesting sequencing to be able to utilize that ability. And so going to be able to go in at this point, creating another gold. And that's going to be up to 4 at this point, already moving incredibly fast. You do have to sometimes be a little bit worried about maybe a Trinity Force being in Master Yi's deck, because if you attach that to the Ruin Runner, that can be a little bit scary in that case, because then you have to somehow get over 9 with a Trinity Force, though it doesn't look like that's going to be necessarily in hand at this point. And so again, here we go. And the Treasure Hunter, I mean, there's 1 left up. No cards hidden here. So could potentially be looking for some answers. Also, the Punch First is such a powerful card, especially when trying to take over battlefields. And that's something that Yi can really seem to struggle with here. So immediately the Ruin Runner is going to be able to take. No information needing to be given away there. Only 1 rune up at that point anyway. And then gonna be playing Master Yi out to be able to take the other battlefield. And there still is 1 rune left at the ready. You do have to be a little bit careful in this case with how you want to go about that. Now, I don't know. He still has multiple runes left. He stacked the deck. I hate that, but there we are. But he still looks like has 3 runes left at the ready. Or 3 orange left, so he is able to do a Punch First if there is any response. And if anything else ends up being taken care of, now, of course, wherever they attack first, you can activate the Zhonya's Hourglass, and it'll immediately move back to base. So this is a good response so far against the Jinx deck. He did fall a little bit behind, but he was able to do some damage. Or he was able to mitigate the damage with the Yi and Ruin Runner taking over both battlefields. And so still, though, it's going to be interesting to see what Jinx is then able to do in this next turn. So, yeah, this, again, is going to be a very, I mean, definitely thinking over things. It looks like there might be a, oh, rebuke back to hand. So a punch first will not, or Azonia's Hourglass for that matter, will not be stopping that going back to hand. A great response here by the Jinx. And it looks like the Hourglass is going to be activated in response, and the Master Yi is going back to hand. Now, still, you do have the punch first that is able to be used here. But still, this is absolutely awesome to be able to see. And so here we go with the Tide Turner moving in. That is going to be a lot of might for a Tide Turner, at least, you know. Then going to be sacking the gold to be able to hide a card and saying pass. So it could be a fight or flight in this case. You do have to be a little bit worried about it potentially having... ooh, there's a charm in that case. So a fight or flight would not be stopping that. And one card in hand for the Jinx. And so I really do like this because he is actually using the Jinx's ability turn after turn. And that's been one of the biggest detriments of Jinx, is that a lot of times people do add the card draw, you know, like stack deck or you know, those other answers there. And it's like, you don't necessarily need to because, well, Jinx is going to be able to do so herself there. But of course, that is just going to be one additional card. And so sometimes that is a little bit hard to try to balance out there in that case. And still, even 3 runes at the ready is definitely something to keep in mind there too. And I mean, you know, props to this guy for bringing Jinx to a regionals here. But it looks like a fight or flight, yep, is going to be fizzled out. That is going to be a great charm right there. But still has some answers in hand. And looks like is going to be equipping another. So, again, still a lot of runes in hand at this point. But very well could be forcing out the punch first to be able to win this battle. Doesn't necessarily feel great. But yeah, there goes the punch first. Of course, going to need to be floating a rune. And it's interesting. He's kept the sabotage in hand in the entire game. Has not used it yet. And is that to his detriment, really? So, yep, looks like going to be passing at that point. Jinx is going to be drawing him an extra card at that point and then drawing for turn. Is that a Kai'Sa that he drew off the top? And again, another punch first, though, in hand. And Jinx doesn't necessarily have any counters or ways to be able to deal with that in particular. And so, going to be recycling 2 at that point to play the Jinx out. And of course, that is going to be the alt art from the Arcane Collector. So really cool to be able to see that be played. And it's the old one, too. Not the one with the new symbol for might in this case. So going to be discarding the Kai'Sa, actually. On the move, Jinx is going to get readied up. This could be scary, and that's going to be a +1. And so, yep, looks like that battlefield is going to be conquered at that point. Nothing needs to be activated with the Arena's Greatest. And still, do you try to attack into the Ruin Runner and go to 7 and say, hey, I will see what you have in response? That can be a really big risk, something that you do want to watch over. And do you attack in? But looks like one is going to be recycled here to equip another. Very well could be committing to this. That is going to be +4. No cards in hand. Or 2 cards in hand. Did no, I got 2. Sorry, my dude. Been there. And 3 runes at the ready to still be used here. Now, of course, all the removal spells aren't going to necessarily be able to be used here, but at least there is another equipment there that is able to be activated. And it's like, what do you have, like Bloodshot? What do you potentially have in hand to get over if they do have, or are you just counting on that they don't have another punch first in hand? It's like, yeah, I can deal with the On Guard, I can deal with the Discipline, but can you deal with the punch first? And that is going to be a hard question to answer here. Because at this point, I mean, you do at least have the Yi. And the hard part is, too, if Ruin Runner goes back to hand, or it goes back to base, and you hide a card, you would have to hide a card in both battlefields, because you would just be able to send the Ruin Runner over into the battlefield that has something hidden, because you're probably counting on that being a fight or flight or something along those lines. And so, again, milling over this answer, but it looks like, yeah, we are going to be going for a punch first. Again, that's going to be a +5 with 1 being floated again as a rune. And that's going to be +5 going to 10. Now, only 3 runes at the ready. I mean, gosh, yeah. So it looks like Yi isn't going to be able to come in on this next turn either. Way too few of runes. You're looking at 7 that you usually need to play here, and unfortunately, that is not going to be the case. So with that, yeah, it looks like the exchange is still going to win, going up to 7, holding both battlefields, and this is going to be a predicament, and very well could be it. And so, yeah, here we go. And the Ruin Runner needs to figure out how to get into both battlefields. And with Yi, I don't think there necessarily is a way to take both, especially with only 5 runes. 7, yeah, sure. 8, yeah, if you're running Dead Bloom in that case. But again, otherwise, I don't think there is a way for him to be able to take both. So this is going to be the game as the Jinx is able to take down the Master Yi. And so some really good answers there. Again, love to see the score there starting at 3-1 respectively on both. Awesome to see that. So we're going to be bringing you guys one more game in the recap here. It's going to be Draven versus Leona. And the interesting thing is a lot of people have counted Leona out, but is that necessarily something that should be counted out? I know Casanova, first and foremost, absolutely would love to, now he's probably going to be playing Leona. He's a huge Leona fan from Turn 'em Sideways, if you guys don't know. And he, I'm sure, had a heyday when he saw Leona that was able to make it so far in the round, and it was 4-1-1, so it had tied, and then it had only lost 1 of the 6 rounds. That's already crazy enough as it is. And so I'm really curious about this, and I really want to see the game that Leona was actually able to win as our final game that we are going to be bringing to you guys, because, yeah, that is very interesting to see here. And so looks like we are going to be watching game 1 here. It is going to be a little bit of a long one, but definitely one to keep an eye on here. I got to say, Love to see Leona doing so good here. And again, this is going to be fun to see, well, what are they then able to do here in this type of situation? So already the Draven has started off really strong, going 3-1 or 3-1 against Leona. And so this is going to be something maybe a little bit difficult to try to deal with here, but at the same time, very well could be a big win here for the Draven. Now, already starting off with a Kai'Sa to be able to be in the Reaver's Row, to be able to go back to the base when it is attacked is a great way to get some insurance on Kai'Sa. That means only direct kill spells could very well be those answers. And Leona, when attacking, is able to stun one. So again, the Draven still has 2 at the ready in this case. So the Leona is going to stun, then be able to be buffed with the legend ability. And so the buff is going to be a +1 as the stun comes down. And then a Call to Glory is going to be spent on that. Oh, great sequencing right there. That is going to be adding an additional 3, spending the buff to be able to add that. And if he has like maybe even another Call to Glory, he could really go big there. But again, he's at 7, needs to get to 8. If I'm doing math. Nope, he has the equipment attached to him too, so he should be over the top in that. And then that's going to be a switcheroo at that point, and that's a not so fast coming down and saying, nope, you're not targeting me, my dude. That spell is dead. And so, yep, that is going to resolve, and a very big win there for the Leona. And so now everything actually should be enough to get over the Might and destroying 2 of the Noxus hopefuls. And so, yeah, still has 2 runes at the ready, but still. Don't know what he could particularly have at this point. Yeah, and this is going to be... I mean, yeah, it looks like that's finally going to resolve here. And again, the Draven did end up winning this match, but still having a Leona that went 4-1-1 is really impressive. Really impressive. And so there we go with the Kai'Sa again being able to score a point right there. The buffs on Leona is gone. And we'll see what's to be had next. And so, yeah, it looks like the Kai'Sa is going to be moving back to base, not necessarily staying there anymore. Might need help attacking into the other battlefield here. And the hard part is even with 1 rune at the ready, that could be tough. But looks like going to be using this turn to rebuild his base. That's going to be a 3-3 with the Leona scoring on the upkeep. So going to be a great response there. Evening up the score where, I mean, it did look like it was going to be a little bit difficult to be able to do so. So a good response, and we'll see what is able to be done here as a wow. Okay. I love that. The Sona is coming out. Now, if Sona is in a battlefield at the end of the turn, you get to ready 4 runes. Now, that can be something that really can be detrimental to the Draven because you spend all the runes that you want, and then you're like, oh, by the way, these are back. And it's like you have stun spells, you have buff spells, you have a lot that Leona has to offer here. And again, this is something that I really like here because taking a Leona into a big tournament like this is going to be something to really consider. And I say that due to the fact that, again, the Draven might be at a little bit of a disadvantage here because, well, what is in a Leona deck? you know? And a lot of people just don't know in this case. But again, here we go with another Kai'Sa coming out. That's going to be the second Kai'Sa. That is a lot of money out on the board now. Of course, not as much in Chinese as it is in English. Prices are falling, though, so that's nice. But still, here we go. Moving in. Oh, and a double. Now, that's going to be 2 cards in hand if this Conquer goes through. And a Zenith Blade is going to be coming down at this point. Gosh, I got to even look up to remember what a Zenith Blade even does. Because, yeah, it's been a minute. I traded one. Was that a mistake? Stun an enemy unit at a battlefield. You may move a friendly unit to that enemy unit's battlefield. Oh, so you get to stun both at that point. And, of course, that's going to be additional buffs that are able to come out. So, or no, if you move a friendly unit, yeah, you wouldn't be attacking at that point. Never mind. So you wouldn't be stunning both. But still, I mean, Leona might be moving back at that point, but you're still able to take out one Kai'Sa. But looks like, yeah, is going to be going into the buff is going to be going over into the Sona. And so, again, this is going to be a kind of big risk, though, because if you don't end up winning this exchange, not only are you going to be winning a combat for Draven, which gets him a card, but then Kai'Sa very well could be drawing another 2 cards, essentially. So it's like, whew, you better hope that he doesn't have the answers here. And so a little bit of a risk, but I got to say, I absolutely love Zenith Blade. Great play here. And yep, there we go with the reaction there. Going to be adding +3 at that point, recycling another rune. And going up to 7 now for the Kai'Sa here. So, I mean, that's going to be a big deal. That's a good answer. And yeah, looks like the Leona is going to be done. And so, again, the judges are clarifying a couple of things, it looks like. But still, a lot of game left to be had here. Yeah, so that's going to be a good answer with the signature spell of Draven. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happening here in this case. I mean, I know the judge is clarifying a couple of things. And so that is a BF sword that is equipped to the Leona there. So that is a 7 Leona. So that is a trade at that point. So, so the Leona is actually going to stay in this case. Interesting. So it won the battle and scored the point. But again, at the cost of a decent amount of runes, you're only going to be having 3 runes left up at that point. And I mean, that the judges stepping in to rectify that was a big deal, because I mean, you saw Ray over there as the Draven player really celebrate that win, and then they're like, wait, this is what actually happens. And so it's like, oh, okay. So again, very interesting situations there. But looks like Draven now is going to be trying to go in, and Leona can back out. But again, that is going to be another card that Draven is able to add in hand. But he doesn't necessarily have a whole lot in hand. So going to be equipping, and that's another rune gone at that point. So again, going down to 3, this is a big risk for the Draven player. Again, you don't want to be very low rune with Draven. You want to be able to play out either multiple cards or a big card. And if you have a lot of power costs that you might not need to spend on a turn. Yeah, so here we go, though, with still 2 runes readied. It looks like, yeah, that is going to be forcing the Fiora back to base. That is going to be a gold created for the Draven champion ability, and then a card drawn for the legend ability. And so here we go, channeling some runes there, going back up to 5. Going to need some responses here. Now, at least can stun the Draven. There is no runes at the ready. So the Sona is going to be readying 4 runes at the end of the game, or at the end of the round. And so we can move in with the Leona and stun, and that would force the Draven back. There wouldn't necessarily be anything that could answer once the unit is stunned. It's just not dealing damage. And so the Leona's at 7 to the Draven's 7, so that is a wash. You're going to see if the Draven wants to back out now, because Reaver's Row is going to activate first. So he will get a chance to say, hey, I want to sack a gold, but it's like, or sack a rune to go up to, yeah, you'd be going up to 9. And that's the thing, too. It would be technically keeping the Draven there because you need to get above the unit. So now they're asking on the sequencing, is my guess, of Reaver's Row and the Draven ability, because one's when I attack and one's when I attack and defend, and one's just when I defend. And so I think you can choose the order there in that case. And so still 3 cards in hand for the Sona player. Needs to get some answers here to get over 9. It's at 7. Even with the stun, if you want the Draven to go back to base, you're going to have to get that kind of answer going. So it looks like we have a discipline in hand. That could be a step in the right direction. But again, you're going to be risking almost the top deck. I need to find that answer on the top deck to be able to get over that mountain. Otherwise, it's going to be 9 to 9. That's a wash with him being stunned. Oh, no. So Leona is... Wait. I thought the Leona stunned when she was the attacker. Interesting. Let me check. Yeah, because that's really interesting there. Because, yeah, the Leona says shield +1 when I'm defending, and when I attack, stun an enemy unit here. And so I'm really curious about where the stun went, because that with discipline would be enough to get to 9, and why that exchange was lost. I'm actually a little bit confused. If you guys know in the comments, please let me know. I might have missed something. But still, interesting sequencing there. That's going to be a big shift right there as another point is scored. But also having the Stellacorn and a Sona in base or in a battlefield is still going to be a pretty good answer. And Stellacorn, of course, if it survives, and I would imagine that is going to be immediately utilized to draw additional cards. But here we go with a Falling Star that is going to be utilized here. And it's going to be double Sona. Now, of course, the Defy is not going to be able to get that, but the Sona is going to be able to get that +2. Already has a buff and an equipment on it, so that should be able to get over. Or it looks like, did he do 1-on-1? I didn't see him. Okay. Yeah, so this is a really interesting sequencing here. And again, it keeps going back and forth. But the hard part with Leona is that she doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of ways to accelerate units out. And so if she does end up struggling a little bit with units getting defeated and things like that, well, then it's like, well, I don't necessarily know how to get back into this game. I got to spend this turn to build up my board to then be able to attack in on the following turn. And that can be very difficult to try to do. And so Draven is going to prematurely pull back in this case. Interesting choice there. And then, I mean, no ride the wind necessarily. 2 runes at the ready. Also, you wouldn't want to ride the wind at this point anyway. Facebreaker could be the face down. A Zhonya's Hourglass could be the face down. Facebreaker would be really good at this point, because if they attacked in to try to, at least, if anything, trade in, and there were any stuns, the units would heal, and, you know, that Falling Star would be essentially wasted. So this is a very scary attack here. Now, we do see a cleave in hand. And I really want to know, why do you think people are playing cleave more than Blood Rush in Bloodshot, Blood Rush, one of those, in Sett 2? In my opinion, I do like the Blood Rush a little bit more. Yes, you get 1 less, but it can be repeated, which I think has a few more circumstances here. So yeah, going to be tapping out in this case to add a card in hand. And is going to be going to the bottom of the deck for the other 2 cards. And so still we have the Kai'Sa that is out on the board, but that is not going to be an attack in. So that is going to be a big difference maker. Again, any stun would just, I mean, immediately kill the Kai'Sa in that case. Not necessarily worth the trade. And so, ooh, and there was a Call to Glory, which the buff could have been spent to really hold on to that Sona there. So here we go. Oh, going to be able to recall back as many readied units in a battlefield you want to the base. Now that can be readied up, and then both would be able to go into the other battlefield. So a great answer there, because they stay ready on the move. It doesn't necessarily exert them because it's the spell that's essentially doing the move for them. So again, another really good answer. And yeah, I'm going to be saying Leona isn't necessarily out of the woods here. It's looking good, and I mean, there we go with the Stellacorn being able to draw a card on the move. That's going to be going up to 7 at that point. And then ooh, yeah, there we go. I mean, this is looking scary. And then you can even play an Irelia at that point too, and 4 of your runes are going to be readied up. Now, of course, you got to be a little bit scared about maybe getting rid of your green rune. You only have 1 left, but if you're able to, I mean, you can't play out a Guardian Angel. 4 runes are at the ready with the Sona ability, but this is really good play here. And a Rebuke in hand that's not going to be able to be defied here. So that's going to be a big send back at that point. And you could do that with the Sona. That would be really big there if you could do that with the Sona. I think that would be the choice. But 5 to 7 right now. The Draven has fallen behind. The Fiora was the Leona. They're all A's at the end. The Leona was able to really hold on quite well here in this game. And so Thundersong is also in hand. That would be all 6 runes. So you would be banking on that you were somehow able to get over all of that, and you can still play reaction stuff. So if they have an Unguard, if they have a Discipline, then they are able to resolve those before the Thundersong is able to be played. But it looks like that is going to be his best choice there. So again, he can spin the buff to be able to go with the Call to Glory, and that, I think, is going to be solidifying the game. That's going to be +4 at that point, because you're choosing the Leona there too. So good job on being able to get that. And I don't think there is any way at that point to get over that. I think maybe the rebuke might have been the better way to go there. But again, that's with us also knowing what was in on the other side, and that is going to be the game 1 victory for the Leona. Now, of course, with that, the Leona ended up losing the next 2 games. I mean, it was still really good games that were happening there. And again, I mean, game 2 was a little weak with like Leona losing 2-8 in that case. But even game number 3 was, 0-7 or 0-8 in that case. And still, though, it's like the Draven was able to find those answers, but still, with the Leona being able, to take a game against a Draven and then going 4-1-1 or 4-1-2 at that point at the end of that round is saying a lot there. And so really cool to be able to see how that ended up playing out, and Leona might be a good option here in this next match. But guys, that's going to be the recap for day 1 of this regionals here in China for Spiritforged. What decks caught your eye? What are you hoping to see in day 2 besides, Draven not necessarily having an overpowered number in the top 64? Let's hope that it's not over 50%. That would be really reassuring. It probably is going to be over 50%, if not over 60% again. Keep that in mind. But I'm still really excited to see what is going to be had here. Thank you guys so much for being here for the recap. And until next time, have a good one.